Welcome to the Tuesday edition of Juan's World, and there's an awful lot I want to talk about today and probably won't get to all of it, but I'll do my best. It's Holy Week. We talked about that a little bit on Friday. Last Sunday was Palm Sunday. Now we're moving forward towards Maundy Thursday, Good Friday, and then finally Easter Sunday. So kind of up and down, very much of a roller coaster, not like approaching Christmas, which was just straight up and up and up and up and up to get to the top of the hill and then slowly descending down the other side. Carnival, then Lent, then Holy Week, and Easter is all up and down and up and down, and we're still after Easter going to get to Pentecost. So there's a long way to go still. And today I'm going to unpack a couple of things. One of them is Passover, because this year Easter and Passover more or less coincide, which they did originally. According to the Gospel of Mark, the Last Supper, which is celebrated on Maundy Thursday, was a Passover supper. This year Passover falls on Friday, so it's a little bit later, although it coincides with what the Gospel of John argues, because John argues that Jesus was crucified at the same time that the lambs were being slaughtered for the Passover. So the Passover is very important in Jewish tradition. It's also important in Christian tradition. So I want to talk about that. I want to talk about tradition in general. And I want to just meander about some other things that have been on my mind. So let's get started. Now the very first thing I'm going to be so happy about is that my book, which is Doing Field Projects, Methods and Practice for Social and Anthropological Research, has finally come out, and I got the copies early this morning. Today is Monday. You'll see this on Tuesday, but they came today. So beautiful book. I'm going to take some pictures in a little while because my sister wants to see them, some of my illustrations. And this doesn't just represent hard work. I mean, it was hard work. It represents my thinking about fieldwork methods for nearly 30 years. And I wrote at least 4 different editions of this and got rejected by 4 different publishers before I finally got it accepted. So this is like the end of a long journey. So that's number 1. Now, number 2 has nothing to do with anything in particular, but I just want to mention this. If you are at all a fan of podcasts and YouTube channels and so forth, you are surely aware that there's quite a number of people who do a lot of videos, like me, maybe 1 or 2 a week or more, sometimes once a day. And they have gigantic microphones on huge gantries stuck in front of their faces. And like here, I want to give you a couple of contrasting examples. This guy, I've forgotten his name now. I think I'll put it up on the screen when I go back and check it out. I think it's called Planar World, something like that. Now he's doing all right. He's got a big professional microphone, and he's got a windscreen in front of it so that it doesn't get any of the sound from his breath on it. But it's all the way over, completely away from him, because it's a very powerful microphone. He can pick up the sound. Doesn't need to be stuck in front of him. But now here's some others. This guy who does well, sort of, he's an ex-Jehovah's Witness. In fact, the next two are this Telltale. He's the first one. Telltale's got this giant microphone in front of his face. You can't see the bottom of his face because it's all covered up. And another JW deconstructor, Lloyd Evans, the same. Sometimes it's close to his mouth than others. And then the political commentator, Sam Seder, he plays with the microphone all the time. It's on this gantry, and he holds the microphone a lot of the time, and he pulls it up to his mouth, and then sometimes you can see his face. What are they doing? They don't need, first of all, they don't need those giant microphones. They often have them in radio studios, and so you'll sometimes see them where someone like Joe Rogan is doing essentially a podcast or radio broadcast, but it's being televised so you can see it. But he's using these professional microphones because it's primarily audio. Well, that makes some sense. But when was the last time you watched a interview, talk show like Jimmy Kimmel or Stephen Colbert or Jimmy Fallon, and they had giant microphones in front of them? No. Now back in the days of Johnny Carson, Johnny Carson had a big microphone, but it was sitting on the desk. You could still see his face. And now people like Colbert and Fallon, they use lavalier mics like this one here. It's perfectly good. I mean, mine's not professional quality. You can get much better ones. But microphones like this are used all the time. They use them for filming videos and movies and game shows or whatever. You don't need a giant microphone in front of your face. Why do they do it? Well, if I were a Freudian, I'd have one kind of answer, but it's certainly something psychological. It's not practical. It's not technological. That they're doing it because it gives them some kind of comfort of some sort. Don't understand. All right, so those are my joys and sorrows for the week. Now let's just talk about Passover for a moment. Passover is one of the high holy days of the Jewish calendar, and it goes all the way back to the Torah, that basically says that Abraham and his descendants populated Canaan, but his grandson Jacob, who had 12 sons, had a bit of a falling out. The sons had a falling out with the youngest, who was like supposedly special, Joseph, and so he was sold into slavery in Egypt, and eventually the remainder of his brothers and his father and all their wives and families came down into Egypt because there was famine in Israel. And that's the end of the book of Genesis. And then the next book is Exodus, and there's a huge gap between Genesis and Exodus, where Joseph's family is very well respected among Pharaoh's kin at one point, but then they become despised slaves, and they grow in numbers and are oppressed, until eventually one of their members, Moses, rises up and rebels against Pharaoh and gets them out, their exodus. And the way he gets them out is the last of a series of plagues, which is the death of every firstborn son in every family, unless you have sacrificed a lamb and smeared the blood on the doorposts of your house, and then the angel of death will pass by. So the Israelites, they're not Jews at this point, they're all the 12 tribes of Israel. Jews are descendants of the tribe of Judah, or the kingdom of Judah, but these are the Israelites, or sometimes we call them the Hebrew people. This was the first Passover. The angel of death passed over the house that had the blood smeared on it. And when that happened, Pharaoh allowed, at least temporarily, allowed the Israelites to leave, but then chased after them and all that kind of thing, and then you've got the 40 years in the desert, and the crossing into Israel, and the conquest study, and so forth. Well, both archaeology and history tell us that none of that happened. And my answer is kind of like, so what? All right, it didn't happen. I'm a Christian minister. I've studied the Bible a lot, and I tend to agree it didn't happen. But just because something doesn't happen, or a story is fictional, doesn't mean it lacks power. The story of the Passover is the defining story for Jews, and it is secondarily defining for Christians too, because it's the season of the Passover and the celebration of the Passover that gives rise to Easter, including, I mean, this one is really a little bit kind of morbid, that the English typically have lamb on Easter Sunday. You could think of it as an echo of the Passover lamb, because in Jewish tradition, they originally ate lamb for the Passover. But Jesus is also called the Lamb of God. So, it's like, yeah, am I eating the Passover lamb, or am I kind of eating the Lamb of God? I don't really know. Anyway, the fact that the Passover and the journeys, 40 years in the desert, the conquest of the Holy Land, and all that kind of thing, that historically and archaeologically it's very clear didn't happen, doesn't matter, because it has become the national defining tale. And that's what matters. What matters is that the narrative has power and brings people together in celebration of the festival and in honoring the story. And I'm sure you can think of a lot of stories that you have read, or maybe movies or dramas or whatever, that have resonated very deeply with you, even though they're fictional. I mean, maybe, for example, you have certain ideas about love, and so certain romantic comedies just appeal to you because they embody the ideas that you hold dearly. That's, for me, the nature of the Passover, and also the nature of Easter. It's really a lot less about resurrection for me, and a lot more about sacrifice, about the idea that if you have ideals that you hold dearly, you're willing to die for them. that's a very powerful message. And now and again, like right now, for example, with Russia invading and trying to take over Ukraine, an awful lot of Ukrainians who are acting like Jesus. Like, this is my homeland. This is what I'm willing to fight for. This is what I'm willing to die for. Well, now, I don't know if there's anything that I'm actually willing to die for. Although, I hope it never comes to this. I remember my mother once saying something to the effect that that she would be willing to die for us children if it happened. So like, for example, if somebody shot at us, she would put her body in the way and take a bullet for us. Well, I can imagine, in theory, like hypothetically, it's not going to happen, but I mean, I can imagine doing that for my son. I don't know what philosophical or political or spiritual ideals I would be willing to die for. But it's something to contemplate. That's the kind of thing that Unpacking Easter is all about. It's about unpacking the ideas. And for me, sacrifice is the central notion that he's got all these friends, all these companions, all these people who support him and will defend him. And he's saying, no, I have to sacrifice myself. You can't do it for me. And that's ultimately what Good Friday is all about, which is where we're getting to. So I hope you have a good and blessed Holy Week. I hope you're enjoying the videos. Please like, please subscribe, please tell your friends if you haven't done so already, and I will see you on Friday.